Chapter 381. It was reasonable to say that to cause chaos in the inner residence, it would take a period of time to ferment. After all, even if there were schemers and courtesans among them, they would need time to do something. Who would have thought that they didn't even need to lift a finger? Prince Kang's in-laws would cause a ruckus on their own. And the reason was very simple. As the saying goes, which family doesn't have a few lecherous people, and they may not have the money to go out and spend it. For some beauties, they could only drool over them, but they didn't even have the opportunity to touch their small hands. Now it was different, someone delivered themselves to their doorstep for free. From now on, let alone touching their small hands, they could do whatever they wanted after closing the door. As a result, between brothers, between uncle and nephew, and even between father and son, there were open and covert fights. The situation could be imagined. The women in the inner residence wanted to say something, but they were righteous and confident. Prince Jean gave it to them, if you have the ability, send it back. Using this as a command arrow, it simply angered them to the point of vomiting blood. Those with cowardly personalities, or those who had long seen through it and didn't want to get involved, just let them cause a ruckus. So what if they lost face? So what if they let people see them as a joke? Their face had long been lost, so it didn't matter if they wanted to pull it out. But when they met those with a shrewish temperament, they would cry to the heavens and scramble for the earth. When Jingwan received the news, she was a little surprised. It was true that she wanted to give them a taste of their own medicine, but wasn't the effect a little too obvious? In this kind of situation, even if they didn't specifically place those people in a courtyard to raise, they should also modestly decline. How could they brazenly fight over it instead? They really didn't want face. After all, they were Prince Kang's in-laws, and directly implicated the Empress behind them. Under the circumstances of favoring clan in-laws, if one family had an accident, every family would be implicated. Even if they didn't think for themselves, they should think for others. Was it really okay to do this now? At least, after the Empress learned of this matter, she would certainly cut people down. And as the main culprit, her name would definitely be hung high in the Empress's eyes. Li Hongyuan held her hand as if he was admiring the most perfect piece of art. This is the nature of a man. How many men do you think there are in this world who are as united as your husband and only love Wan? Looking at this shameless man, Jingwan leaned over with a smile and held his face. Of course, this is the most precious treasure in the world. In the end, it fell into my hands. This is the blessing of 8 lifetimes. Li Hongyuan's eyes were dark. He didn't say what he was thinking, but he nodded in agreement. That's right. So, Wan must hold on to her tightly and cherish her. Yes, I'll definitely hold it tightly. I'll hold it in my palm, keep it in my mouth, and put it in my pocket. I'll take it with me wherever I go. As long as this treasure doesn't run away on its own. Li Hongyuan didn't think that Jingwan didn't believe him now, or that she was still worried about personal gains and losses. It was just that people's hearts were fickle. They had only been married for a little more than half a year, and there was still a long way to go in the future. If it weren't for his situation, where he had already experienced the vicissitudes of life, even he himself wouldn't dare to say that he would be with Jingwan for the rest of his life. Li Hongyuan held her in his arms. I once said that Wan's sincerity can be exchanged for my life. These words will always be valid. Then you can see if you can wait until the day I die of old age. As long as he died of old age, his most precious treasure would definitely not run away. If he had the thought of running away, he would go to hell. You still remember? I almost forgot. Jingwan rubbed her face against the side of his face. You really forgot? Li Hongyuan expressed his doubts. Jingwan was speechless for a moment. Ah, Yuan, as a good husband, sometimes, you shouldn't expose your beloved wife's white lies. Do you understand? The matter of exchanging one's heart for his life was probably engraved in one's soul. How could he forget it? If their relationship was ordinary, it might soon fade away. It was because of their deep relationship that the memory of that moment was destined to be more profound. Yes, yes, yes. I'll do whatever my beloved wife says. I'll pay attention to it in the future. Li Hongyuan laughed in spite of himself. He was indescribably gentle and affectionate. After they were done, Jingwan's IQ didn't drop. It was very likely that there was something wrong with this matter. She didn't believe that so many people had holes in their heads. There must be something fishy about it. Moreover, it was very likely that it had something to do with someone. Although he didn't say it, Jingwan could always find a breakthrough. Obviously, the lackey eunuch Mu was the best choice. Because it wasn't something that couldn't be said, eunuch Mu naturally said everything he knew. He played the role of a lackey incisively and vividly. Jingwan soon knew the cause and effect. Sure enough, there was something fishy about it. It wasn't as simple as her asking Mu and to buy someone and then directly sending someone to pick them up. There was also Li Hongyuan's hand in it. Of course, his usual style was to directly give orders. As a result, the situation changed. He didn't send someone casually, but carefully. Some men always had one or two sweethearts in the red light district. They could see them, but they couldn't touch them. It was simply like a magic barrier. When the person was sent to them, they naturally didn't care and threw everything to the back of their mind. Jingwan said in her heart, this was really. In terms of black-hearted and ruthless, how many people could be compared with Jin Qinwang? Just a small matter could make him turn over a storm. However, in the end, Li Hongyuan did it for her. Otherwise, who would do such a boring thing? Naturally, she accepted his kindness. Jin Qinwang Fu was calm and tranquil. From top to bottom, they did what they should do. There was no impact at all. Outside, it was a complete mess. Prince Kang's righteous Yu clan, because he did not have a second wife, was naturally the only one. For such a large clan, there would definitely be a lot of disputes inside, so naturally, it would be the most lively. Of course, this liveliness was different from other clans, it was purely an internal war. It was probably because there was a second generation who had a deep Chinibu syndrome, jumping up and down, either fanning the flames or stirring up all kinds of trouble. Originally, when it was about to die down, he would reveal some shocking information that others did not know about, causing the flames of war to reignite with a whoosh, 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 whoosh. As for whether Li Hongyuan's hand was involved in this, it was unknown. After all, even eunuch Mu didn't know, so there was no way to talk about it. It hadn't even been a day, but he directly sent a plate to the palace to ask for an audience with the Empress. This kind of life was really hard to pass. In the end, this was all caused by Prince Kang. Empress, are you going to do something about it or not? As the saying goes, when one person takes the lead, others will follow suit. The concubines in Prince Kang's harem also had high and low family backgrounds. Some of them came from the lower class and naturally didn't even have a maternal family. The highest ranking among them was probably a third or fourth rank official. They weren't even related to their father. But at this time, there was no doubt that they were harmed. How could they ignore it and watch with folded arms? Look for the Empress, together, together. If they didn't give an explanation, naturally, they shouldn't expect them to not do things diligently in the future. Originally, Jingwan didn't want to do anything to Prince Kang's other Zifei who was abandoned by the family. However, because they came from Qin family, noble consort Su's hardcore supporters, if they abandoned this family and didn't send beauties, wouldn't it tell outsiders that their husband was actually on Prince Roy's side? That was absolutely impossible. Therefore, this Qin family couldn't find Empress Sun, so they went to find noble consort Su. If it didn't involve the Qin family, noble consort Su would definitely watch a good show. The more fun Empress Sun had, the happier she would be. Although she didn't want to admit it, if it was just a one-on-one competition, she was probably not Empress Sun's opponent. However, no matter how powerful Empress Sun was, she couldn't withstand her stupid son who specialized in making things difficult for her. This pig teammate could even drag God down from the altar. But now, she couldn't sit still. She had seen the power of a pig teammate. The trouble caused by this daughter-in-law was an indiscriminate attack. The only difference was whether one was involved or not. Those who weren't involved didn't have any benefits at all. If one was too focused on watching the show, he or she might accidentally be involved. It was just that the people watching the show hadn't realized this yet. Noble consort Su's endurance was not as good as Empress Sun's. Even if she was not well recently and was in low spirits, when she heard her cousin-in-law, the wife of the right governor, and the other two daughters-in-law of the Qin family crying, her temples couldn't help but twitch and hurt badly. Annoyed by the crying, she directly smashed the cup. The crying in the Jade Essence Palace abruptly stopped. What does this Lady Luo want to do? She's causing trouble one after another. Is there no end to it? The women below let out a sigh of relief. They thought that noble consort Su was angry at them, but they didn't dare to continue crying. Noble consort, what should we do? If this continues, we won't be able to do anything. Noble consort Su rubbed her temples. Come, summon Jean Wangfei to the palace. No, summon old Madame Luo to the palace. Noble consort Su thought about how she was angered to the point of vomiting blood by old Sixth's daughter-in-law. In the end, her son still helped his wife. She hadn't seen her son these days, and she didn't want to see that daughter-in-law of hers. Therefore, she had to find someone who could definitely control her. Without a doubt, old Madame Luo was the best choice. Although old Madame Luo had been sitting at home these days, she was very clear about what was going on outside. However, she was calm and unperturbed. At the same time, she was prepared to be invited to the palace. Therefore, when the people from the Jade Essence Palace came, she wasn't surprised. She changed her clothes, brought along a servant girl, and entered the palace in an unusually free and easy manner. After all, she was a woman appointed by the imperial court, and her husband was the minister of the Ministry of Appointments. Noble consort Su naturally had to be polite. She let the servant serve tea, wore a warm smile, and inquired about her well-being. Only then did she tell the purpose of the lovers' attack. Old Madame Luo's face was filled with astonishment. Wasn't it said that Jean Qinhuang was also the one who sent it? How did it involve Jean Qinhuang? Jean Wangfei was brought up by this noble consort. This noble consort is very clear about her temperament. She definitely wouldn't do such an improper thing. On the other hand, Jean Qinhuang, as far as this noble consort knows, he often does this kind of thing in the past. This time, it will definitely be the same. Noble consort Su suppressed the old blood in her heart, Yuan, or only occasionally sends one or two. Those are basically between the imperial family. Even if it's someone with a different surname, most of them are the prince consort and Juanma. He is a bit careless, but he disdains to send people to the families of those low-ranking officials. Old Sixth's wife had personally said at Prince Kang's Fu that this matter isn't over. Noble consort Su stirred the tea. Bengong doesn't have any other meaning. I just want old madam to advise old Sixth's wife. Prince Kong has angered her, and it's over after venting her anger. This woman has a bit of a temper and is a bit jealous. This is a very normal thing, but there should be a limit to it. Don't make everyone's face look bad. So to say, noble consort Nyang Nyang also thinks that Prince Kong sending molesters to Jin Qin Wang Yi is the same as sending ordinary beauties, and doesn't have any other meaning. Jin Qin Wang Fei is using this as an excuse because she's jealous. Noble consort Nyang Nyang can guarantee that Prince Kong really doesn't have any bad intentions. If Jin Qin Wang Fei doesn't deal with the person, if something happens in the end, who is to blame? Right now, Jin Qin Wang Fu only has Jin Qin Wang Fei as the mistress. If something happens, does she still want her face? Does she still want to live? For the sake of the imperial family's face, would they push all the blame onto her head, saying that she didn't abide by the virtues of a woman, and had an affair? Jin Qin Wang Fei is a daughter from the Luo family. How should the Luo family deal with it? Chen Fu even suspects that this is a plot against Jin Qin Wang Fei, against the Luo family. It's fine if noble consort Nyang Nyang doesn't uphold justice for your own daughter-in-law, but instead, you're blaming Jin Qin Wang Fei. You. At this moment, old Madame Luo wasn't as amiable as before. She was also respectful towards noble consort Su, and her words carried coldness. Noble consort Su was blocked to the point that she couldn't speak. She stiffly tugged at the corner of her mouth. It's not to that extent, noble consort Nyang Nyang. As the saying goes, one shouldn't have the heart to harm others, but one must have the heart to guard against others. What kind of situation is it now? Everyone is clear. Some things can be investigated after it has happened. Even if some people get punished, it's useless. Everyone understood the reasoning, but this matter, old Madame Luo, we're talking about the matter of Jin Qin Wang Fei sending the beauty. The daughter-in-law of the Qin family saw that noble consort Su was speechless and spoke up. I also said that the one who sent the beauty was Jin Qin Wang Yi. If you want a reason, shouldn't it be Jin Qin Wang Yi? But this matter was done by Jin Qin Wang Fei. Where's the evidence? Old Madame Luo lightly glanced at the other party. Everything needs to be based on solid evidence, don't speak without thinking. Jin Qin Wang Yi has no reason to do this. The other party persisted. Ah. Old Madame Luo chuckled, but it was indescribably mocking. Jin Qin Wang Yi has done many things in the past, does he have a reason for everything he does? Otherwise, he would have directly called Jin Qin Wang Yi and Wang Fei into the palace to confront each other. So it could be said that with Jin Qin Wang Yi's black reputation, no matter what was pushed onto him, it could be said that he was a professional scapegoat. Of course, he had always been the scapegoat for his own wife. If other people wanted him to be the scapegoat, the result would definitely be extremely miserable. This time, no one spoke again. The people below all looked at Imperial Concubine Su at the same time. Imperial Concubine Su only felt that her head hurt even more. Her son simply refused to see her. If she forcefully called him into the palace, it could be said that there would be another knot that had not been removed before. This was absolutely not what Imperial Concubine Su wanted to see. Moreover, even if they really confronted each other, if he said that he did it, then what should she do? In the past, there were many more disgraceful things than this, but in the end, didn't they just leave it unsettled? Imperial Concubine Nyang Nyang, this subject's wife, has to say, although this matter seems to be big, in essence, it is just a trivial matter. The families who received the beauty, because it was Jin Qin Wang Yi who sent her, it was not easy to refuse. However, Jin Qin Wang Yi did not forcefully stuff her into those men's beds. He just casually found a place to raise her. As the saying goes, a cow does not drink water, can it be forced to drink water? There are many officials in the capital. Every day, there may be people who send people away, and there may be people who receive people, but there has never been a farce in those people's homes. Now, these families are in a mess. In the end, it's still those men's own problems. They only know how to find excuses from others and never face their own problems. It's really unreasonable. Old Madame Luo's words hit the root of the problem. It also made the Qin family's daughters-in-law blush, including the right governor's wife. Originally, it had nothing to do with her, but because she was a sister-in-law, she couldn't stand their pleas and made a trip. But now, it made her so ashamed that she was unable to show her face. This subject's wife sees that imperial concubine Nyang seems to be tired. If there is nothing else, this subject's wife will take her leave first, so as not to delay imperial concubine Nyang's rest. No matter what happens, a person's body is their biggest asset. If the body collapses, then nothing can be done. Old Madame Luo's words were sincere because she herself was the best example. She had nothing to worry about now and could be considered to be enjoying her remaining years. Jingwan was married and her husband treated her very well. Now, she wanted to see Jingwan's child be born and didn't want Jingwan to worry. Therefore, she had always paid attention to her body. Imperial concubine Su nodded, "Many thanks for old Madame's concern. Ben Gong will have someone send you out of the palace." Old Madame Luo gave her thanks, turned around, and calmly left. The remaining Qin family's daughters-in-law looked at each other in dismay. Imperial concubine Nyang, Imperial concubine Su waved her hand. With old Madame Luo's comparison, she felt more and more that these people didn't have any eyesight. You all heard it. This matter is unreasonable no matter how you talk about it. You all should also go back. Properly managing your own men is the right thing to do. If you can't lock them up, then it's your own problem. Ben Gong is tired. She couldn't really go find Qin Wang, so this matter could only be left unsettled. Therefore, she sullenly asked Imperial concubine Su to take her leave. However, after listening to old Madame Luo's words, Imperial concubine Su's heart also settled down. The Empress wouldn't find trouble with her. Therefore, after all was said and done, the most serious problem in this matter seemed to be that the eldest grandson of the D Emperor almost lost his hearing. But now that he had received treatment, he could recover. The main culprit was Kong Qin Wang. Luqingdi had already punished a portion of them. As for the rest, it could only be clear when the time came. As for Qin Wang's matter, it seemed to be very serious. However, just as she said, Qin Wang didn't say anything, so why would other people meddle in it? Even if she was in the wrong and Luqingdi didn't make a move, no matter how much other people jumped around, it was useless. What was the reason for all parties to move together? After old Madame Luo left the palace, she didn't directly return to the Luo residence. Instead, she went to Qin Wang Fu. Although she knew that Jingwan's actions were within her control and that Qin Wang was controlling things from behind, nothing would happen. But, one after another, popping up from time to time still made people unable to stop worrying. When old Madame Luo went to Qin Wang Fu, she didn't need a visiting card. She respectfully welcomed people in and quickly sent someone to report to Li Hongyuan and Jingwan. Speaking of which, it was the first time that old Madame Luo entered Qin Wang Fu. Not to mention other things, just by looking at the overall layout, she could see Qin Wang's intentions towards his granddaughter. In old Madame Luo's view, as long as their relationship was good, it didn't matter if there were more messy matters. In just this short period of time, she had already decided not to ask what they were going to do or what they were doing. When Jingwan saw old Madame Luo, she quickly went up to greet her. She didn't want greetings or anything. Both sides didn't need to. Although Li Hongyuan was a super vinegar jar, he wasn't to the extent that he didn't leave this space for Jingwan. After saying a few words to old Madame Luo, he turned and left. Don't look at how he was very idle all day long. In fact, he had a lot of things to do. If he really wanted to do everything by himself, 24 hours a day wasn't enough. Jingwan could guess the purpose of her grandmother's visit, but now, she didn't even mention half a word. Jingwan also didn't take the initiative to bring it up. Jingwan held old Madame Luo's arm and took her to walk around the garden. There are a lot of famous treasures in the Fu. Some can be split and some seeds have been collected. After next spring, we should be able to get some new plants. At that time, we'll send a few more pots to grandfather. Why do you care about him? If he really gets your flowers and plants, who knows how he'll show them off to others. Jingwan chuckled, speaking of which, grandfather doesn't have any other preferences. What he likes is just what I'm good at. They all say that old children are old children, the older they get, the younger they get. Grandfather has never been careless about important matters. Showing off the flowers and plants is nothing serious. That's the reason, so I'm too lazy to care about him. He can do whatever he wants. Grandmother, you don't have to worry about me. Everything will be taken care of by the prince. According to my temperament, it's better to live my own life quietly. There are some things that don't need to be said. She would only feel helpless if she said too much. How could old Madame Luo not know that Jingwan was a person who didn't look for trouble? The prince's mansion was clean. There was no need for her to make trouble for others. Old Madame Luo basically understood all the unsaid words. However, she might have misunderstood a little. In her opinion, Li Hongyuan wanted everyone to focus on Jingwan so that she could do something in secret. Even if she protected Jingwan well and didn't let her get hurt, old Madame Luo still felt a little angry in her heart. Jingwan didn't know what old Madame Luo was thinking. Naturally, she wouldn't explain because no one would believe her if she said it. Just because he wanted to see that his wife cared about him very much, it was not enough to talk about it. He needed to do something to prove it. It was so childish and made people speechless. Ordinary people wouldn't do it. However, Li Hongyuan was right. She didn't want outsiders to know that her husband was sick. As for what old Madame Luo thought, before old Madame Luo left, Li Hongyuan came out to see her off. This was a bit unexpected for old Madame Luo. After all, he was a prince. There was no need for him to do so. However, she understood the reason immediately. In the end, it was because of Jingwan. Her previous anger dissipated a little. However, she still found an excuse to send Jingwan away. How could Jingwan not understand? She was very cooperative. His Highness asked Jingwan to create trouble. No matter what his purpose is behind it, I hope that you can make sure that Wanwan is safe. Because of you, she has a bad reputation. I also hope that you don't let her down. If you didn't get her in the first place, it wouldn't be a big deal. However, if you get her and lose her, it will be an extremely painful thing. I know very well that His Highness is not a kind person, nor is he a person who values relationships. However, since you have given Wanwan a gentleness that no one else has, it doesn't matter whether the dream you once said was true or not. It means that she is indeed different to you. I hope that this friendship can continue. Even if you lie to her, please lie to her for a long time. It would be best for a lifetime. Li Hongyuan listened to old Madame Luo quietly. He didn't care about old Madame Luo's doubts about him. He only cared about Jingwan's thoughts. And what old Madame Luo thought was not completely wrong. However, that was just Li Hongyuan's purpose. Because there would be a war in the northeast border city this winter, it was not easy to secretly increase military supplies. Although it was more or less ready, he couldn't relax until the last step. If there was a little mistake, his plan might be exposed. It was not impossible to seize the throne now, but it was not a good time. Once there was internal turmoil and external war, the troubles would multiply. Not to mention, he originally estimated that the war might be brought forward this year. Because he and Jingwan stayed in Jiangnan, he made arrangements. Looking at the current situation, the time of the war would basically coincide with the time in his previous life. It was impossible to push it back. After all, Li Hongyuan was a human and not a god. It was already good enough that he could control the situation this year, and it was closely related to another country. In his previous life, Fu Yunting held on for a year and was defeated by their own people. Li Hongyuan wanted to save the lives of 200,000 to 300,000 soldiers. It was not something that could be done with just a few words. Moreover, there was still no clue as to why his father wanted to exterminate Fu Yunting's family. Of course, there was the possibility that Li Hongyuan did not investigate carefully. All of these things had to be carried out in secret. Therefore, it was better if there was someone to distract his attention. If it was not his wife, he would have created another incident. However, because of what Jingwan did, he did not divert his attention to plot. Don't say that Li Hongyuan was the idle king, and no one paid attention to him. In fact, some of the things he did were already exposed. After all, it had been several years. If no one noticed at all, then his opponents were really a group of idiots. Currently, they had not found him. As the saying goes, it is better to be safe than sorry. It was good that someone was disrupting their line of sight. After all, he, Li Hongyuan, had such a troublesome wife. Even if he did not give up some of his suspicions, he would still lower his guard. Therefore, Li Hongyuan did not deny Madame Luo's opinion. It's just empty talk. Madame Luo, you just have to wait and see. Therefore, it is better for you to live a long life. Wan's thoughts are the same. This old woman of mine is doing well. Prince and Princess Consort, you don't have to worry. That can't be better. Jingwan appeared at the right time and then sent Madame Luo out of the prince's mansion. Of course, she still prepared a lot of things. For example, there were many good medicinal herbs in the gifts sent by the He family. Half of them were given, and the palace did not have a share. However, the He family must have prepared more for Luqingdi. After sending Madame Luo away, Jingwan put her hands on her hips and said fiercely, "Tell me honestly, what did grandmother say to you?" Li Hongyuan smiled enchantingly and brushed his fingertips across Jingwan's face. He lowered his voice, Wan, what did your grandmother say to me?" Jingwan felt that her ears were about to become pregnant. Bastard, this trick again. Every time, it was like this, but she could not resist it. She slapped his hand away. "I'm too lazy to talk to you." She turned and walked away. She could basically imagine what her grandmother would say. Li Hongyuan rubbed his fingers as if he was reminiscing. He followed Jingwan slowly with a smile. Li Hongyuan knew what would happen to noble consort Su. He also believed in Madame Luo's fighting ability. With his own reasons, noble consort Su would not care. However, the Empress would definitely not let it go. Even if she knew that Jingwan was wrong in this matter, her attitude would not be the same as noble consort Su's because this matter concerned her face and even her status. No matter how much she could bear it, she could not bear it. If she did not do anything, she would only be ridiculed by the concubines. They would think that she was not so capable. If an empress who was not valued by the emperor lost her prestige in the harem, the consequences could be imagined. Therefore, she made the empress seriously ill not only to break Prince Kang's arm, but also for Jingwan. Empress Sun was too shrewd. When she really planned something, she might not be able to completely prevent it. Just when Prince Kang's condition was stable and he only needed to take medicine for a period of time to recover, there was suddenly news from the palace that the empress vomited blood and fainted. She was in great pain. Prince Kang's heir apparent's injury could cause quite a commotion. The empress's sudden illness naturally made people feel even more anxious. Especially those in Prince Kang's faction. To a certain extent, Prince Kang might be the center, but the empress was their stabilizing force. With Prince Kang's temperament and ability, if it was not for the Empress, the number of people who supported him would be reduced by at least 2/3. It could be said that without the Empress, Prince Kang absolutely had no hope. Prince Kang's understanding of this point might not be very clear, but he vaguely understood. So he panicked all of a sudden and did not think about anything else. He hurriedly rushed to the palace. The 2 or 3 imperial physicians who were still in Prince Kung Fu also entered the palace at this time. As for Gongzhou, no one allowed him to go together. After all, the palace was not an ordinary place. With his status, he naturally could not go in at will. Moreover, even if he wanted to go in, it would be Li Hongyuan who brought him, not Prince Kang nor the imperial physicians. Because Yu Ji-er only needed to continue taking medicine, Gongzhou returned to Prince Jin Fu. Li Hongyuan leisurely flipped through a book and asked him to prepare before following him into the palace. Gongzhou complied. Those who did not want anything to happen to the Empress were not only those in Prince Kang's faction, but also noble consort Su and the others. If the Empress fell, then the balance in the harem would be broken. There would be no one else who could compete with noble consort Su. The older Emperor Luqing got, the more suspicious he became. He did not want to give up the position below him and would not sit by and watch this kind of situation. If he wanted to establish the balance, then he could only let noble consort Su fall. The other imperial concubines could not see through the stakes in this and would also think that without the Empress, noble consort Su's family would be the most powerful. They would have plenty of time and energy, and it would only be more difficult for them. Therefore, no one really wanted anything to happen to the Empress at this time. It was just that when Jingwan looked at Li Hongyuan again, there was a bit of admiration in her eyes. To make the Empress fall just like that, this ability, after tidying up properly, he slowly entered the palace. His speed was about the same as his other adult brothers. However, as the center of attention during this period of time, Jingwan naturally attracted a lot of attention. Jingwan, on the other hand, acted as if nothing had happened. Many people secretly said in their hearts, just this kind of composure is really amazing. As the mother of the country, many people naturally rushed over at the first moment, but there were even more people who wanted to go but could not. Therefore, when Jingwan and the others arrived at Kunyi Palace, all the people who lived in the palace who could have a place were all present. No matter what they seemed to be thinking, they all showed some real or fake worry on the surface. Some even used their handkerchiefs to wipe the corners of their eyes from time to time. Jingwan quietly followed Li Hongyuan. Anyway, they could not see the Empress at this time. They only needed to wait outside. As for how long they had to wait and whether they could see the Empress, it was another matter. As for whether they, as the daughters-in-law, would serve the Empress, it was up to Emperor Luqing to decide. However, under normal circumstances, even if the Empress woke up, she would not do such a thing to offend people. Noble consort Su saw Jingwan and the others as soon as they came in and went forward somewhat anxiously. Yuan greetings to Imperial Mother. Jingwan followed Li Hongyuan and bowed to her. Quickly rise. Noble consort Su stretched out her hand. Probably because she thought of the current situation, she only helped her up slightly. Noble consort Su sized up Li Hongyuan. She looked as if she was ill from longing. Li Hongyuan frowned slightly. Imperial Mother's complexion is not very good. Is she feeling unwell? Did you ask the Imperial physician to take a look? What medicine did she take? Li Hongyuan's concern almost made noble consort Su cry. No, Imperial Mother is fine. Yuan you don't have to worry. This son has also brought the estate's physician. Let him take Imperial Mother's pulse. This way, this son can be more at ease. Okay, as you wish. Noble consort Su wanted to mention the unhappiness between them, but when the words reached her mouth, she swallowed them back and changed to a more tactful way of saying, "It's just that Yuan hasn't entered the palace to see Imperial Mother for a long time. It's this son's fault. This son has been a little busy recently, but now that I'm done, I can enter the palace to see Imperial Mother at any time. When Imperial Mother wants to see this son, you can send someone to inform this son." The meaning behind his words couldn't be more obvious. Noble consort Su was naturally happy that her son no longer avoided her, but she also knew very well that there was already a gap between them, and she was afraid that it wouldn't disappear. Noble consort Su didn't have the courage to touch it and tear open the scar because she wasn't sure if it would heal bit by bit or worsen even more after tearing it open, so she could only maintain the status quo. Afterwards, noble consort Su pulled Li Hongyuan aside and chatted with him. Perhaps it was because Li Hongyuan was protecting Jingwan and didn't have a good impression of Jingwan, but for the sake of her son, she still said a few words to Jingwan. Jingwan responded with ease. As for the relationship between her and noble consort Su, who would care about the true relationship between them? Noble consort Su discovered that when she spoke with Jingwan, the aura on her son's body was clearly gentler. In her opinion, this son still hoped that the mother-in-law and daughter-in-law could get along well, so she endured the unhappiness in her heart and chatted with Jingwan more. Jingwan saw this and understood that she was in the palm of her son's hand. It could even be said that she was being toyed with. To be honest, noble consort Su, as a mother, was actually quite bitter and sullen. However, Jingwan didn't sympathize with her. It could only be said that noble consort Su reaped what she sowed. It was either wholeheartedly good, or it was business and didn't get emotional. Noble consort Su chose to be in the middle, so no matter what fruit she bore, she would eat it herself. Many people were paying attention to them. Among them, the most unpredictable one was probably Li Hongming. After this incident, he roughly understood one thing. His mother regarded him as the heir and Li Hongyuan as her son. There was naturally a difference between the two, and sometimes the difference was very big. In the past, he would be jealous, but in the future, he would work hard to correct his attitude. After all, Li Hongyuan had helped him, so he should still thank him. He hadn't found the opportunity before, so he had to do it as soon as possible. Princess Consort Rui saw everything. She lowered her eyebrows and didn't say a word. "Greetings to Imperial Father." These words alarmed the others. Then, they all saw Luqingdi coming out of the Empress's bedchamber and greeted him one after another. Luqingdi nodded indifferently. "You may dispense with the formalities." Then his eyes fell on Li Hongyuan. "Sixth brother, where is the doctor in your mansion? Let him enter the palace and take a look at the Empress." Anyway, Gongzhou's medical skills had been shown once by Prince Kang's heir and had been recognized by the imperial doctors. Naturally, no one would say anything at this moment. "When I entered the palace, I brought him with me. He is now outside the hall." Chapter 382. The princess consort was the one who asked me to bring the physician. It has nothing to do with this son. This son originally thought that with so many imperial physicians, it would be fine if they couldn't treat Yu Ji's injury, but it wouldn't be to the extent that they couldn't do anything about the Empress's illness. However, Wang Fei said that they should be prepared for emergencies. It would be best if there was no need, but if there was a need, it would be to avoid wasting time. Looking at it now, she was right. Li Hongyuan said indifferently. However, anyone could hear the sarcasm in his words. The corner of Luqingdi's mouth twitched. Did he have to be so honest? However, on second thought, this vile spawn really wasn't attentive enough to care for others. Other than the imperial consort, including him, it was already good enough for him to come and take a look at him at the first moment. However, in the end, it was his own fault for spoiling him. Who could he blame? Old sixth wife, you're too considerate. You probably worried a lot when you met this bastard. You should be more forgiving. If it was any other son, Luchingdi wouldn't say such words. However, this son of his was really troublesome. Although he was thick-skinned, he would only praise him when he had no choice but to. Under normal circumstances, he was too embarrassed to say such words. Imperial father is too kind. His Highness is very good. Jingwan lowered her head. These words were the truth. It wasn't just Luchingdi who was affected, but also Jingwan. A certain person's image was really deeply ingrained in people's hearts. It made those who were closest to him in this world think that he was unreliable. The degree of his foolishness had already broken through the sky. Well, if Luchingdi knew his son's true appearance, what kind of feelings would he have? What kind of expression would he have? Would he be more angry at being deceived, or would he be more comforted? Also, she did have the intention to bring Gongzhou along. However, before she could say it, a certain person had already arranged everything. Well, she would feel embarrassed if he put all the blame on her, even though she wouldn't blush. She had gained a good impression in front of Luchingdi, but it would probably also gain a bad impression from other people. After all, if it was Li Hongyuan who did this, they probably wouldn't have any reaction, because nothing he did could be judged with common sense. However, it was different if it was her. She might be thought to have sinister intentions, especially in noble consort Su's heart. She was so filial to the Empress, but so unfilial to her. Thinking about this, Jingwan's heart was a little messy. Well, it doesn't matter. If the soldiers come, the husband will block them. If the water comes, the husband will cover it. Now, Jingwan was quite self-aware. You don't have to put in a good word for him. I know better than you what kind of character he is. Luchingdi waved his hand. You really don't know anything. Jingwan did not try to defend herself. After all, this did not matter to a certain someone. It did not matter at all. Gongzhou was called into the hall. He was well behaved and didn't look sideways. It was just that his etiquette was a little lacking. Jingwan saw this and was slightly surprised. It was reasonable to say that Gongzhou's etiquette was absolutely passable. However, since he was brought back from the outside, his perfect etiquette was a flaw. If people noticed it, it might arouse suspicion. At that time, he might really be thought to have ulterior motives. She didn't know if it was a Yuan who reminded him, or Gongzhou himself who noticed this. At least, Jingwan herself only reacted when she saw Gongzhou salute. Therefore, no matter who it was, it could only mean that she was far from enough. Luchingdi already knew that the new Fu doctor of Jin Qinhuang Fu was young, but after seeing the person, he was still a little surprised. Although it was said that those who reached the top were the seniors, but in some industries, being young would still be looked down upon. If it wasn't because he was Prince Kang's Shitzi, Gongzhou definitely wouldn't be able to stand here easily. Luchingdi let people bring him in, while he himself sat down in the outer hall. In addition to Prince Kang, all of Luchingdi's children, daughters-in-law, son-in-law, and concubines were present. As for the grandchildren, as long as they could walk, they were also present. The number of legitimate children and concubines was not small, so it looked a little crowded. After that, it was estimated that the princesses and fumas of the same generation as Luchingdi, as well as the people with status in the Li clan would also enter the palace. This number of people was enough to give people a headache. Luchingdi waved his hand to let all the concubines return to their own palaces and take away all the younger generation. It wasn't that no one wanted to express their worry or filial piety, but when Luchingdi swept a cold glance at them, whether it was their expression or their movements, they all froze and then resentfully left. Jingwan followed Li Hongyuan to Su Gue Fei's Yuchui Palace. In addition to the two of them, there was naturally also Prince Rui's Qin Wang Fei and their two children, as well as Princess Minxiang and her Fuma. Princess Minxiang was Su Guifei's beloved daughter and was naturally doted on. The status of the Fuma she chose was naturally about the same as the other princesses. The difference was that Princess Minxiang was very overbearing. She didn't even think about being a concubine and had a high and mighty attitude when facing her Fuma, as if that wasn't her husband, but a male pet she raised. She could summon him and send him away as she pleased. The fifth Fuma was also submissive and had an appearance of being bullied. Ever since Princess Minxiang got married, she had been living in her own residence. Her parents-in-law, mother-in-law, and the Fuma's uncles and elders, not to mention filial piety, had to respectfully bow to her every time they saw her. When she needed them for something, they had to send people to see her. They were also arrogant and bossy. Actually, these weren't all that much. The most outrageous thing was that Princess Minxiang didn't want to have children now. When she got pregnant, she aborted the child with 1 dose of medicine. She didn't even hide it from her Fuma. After drinking the medicine, the child was gone. Looking at the fuming Fuma, she even sneered and called him a good-for-nothing, and a useless man. Everyone paid attention to inheritance and heirs. It could be imagined how infuriating Princess Minxiang's actions were. At that time, the servant girls and nannies serving her were a bit alarmed, afraid that the Fuma would explode. After all, Princess Minxiang didn't want to have children and didn't allow the Fuma to touch other people. What was the difference between this and cutting off one's heirs? Even if she was a princess, it was her fault that such a thing happened. No matter how much Su Guifei doted on her, she couldn't openly side with her in this matter. In the end, the fifth Fuma endured it. When the fifth Fuma stepped out of Princess Minxiang's room, Princess Minxiang even said to her nannies, "See, I knew this good-for-nothing wouldn't dare to do anything." From then on, Princess Minxiang became more and more arrogant. Even the people around her all recognized the fifth Fuma as a good-for-nothing and didn't treat him as a master. Every time they met, it was already good enough that they could greet him hastily. Princess Minxiang didn't like him but liked to cause trouble. She would call him to the princess residence every day. Even if it was out of 10 times, she wouldn't see him at least 6 or 7 times. She even made the fifth Fuma kneel in front of her room all night long. Also, she allowed her subordinates to ask for benefits from the Fuma. After Princess Minxiang had dealt with the Fuma, she wasn't stingy with the benefits that she should give to his family. Or it could be said that she was using this method to tell the Fuma how capable she was. If he wanted to resist her, he had to weigh his own weight first. Other than that, only the parents of the fifth prince consort knew a little about the situation, but they didn't make it public. As for the other elders, they had very little contact with them. Their impression was that Princess Minxiang was probably not very close to people. But thinking that she was a princess and was of noble descent, it was most likely normal. It probably wasn't because of Princess Minxiang's generosity. Therefore, this extremely illogical couple, in the eyes of outsiders, was actually harmonious and deeply in love with each other. Noble consort Su was a person who took care of everything. If she knew that her daughter was like this after getting married, it would be like tearing her face clean, throwing her on the ground and stepping on her before sending her into the smelly ditch. Who knew what expression she would have? However, she still thought that her daughter was very good and was sensible after getting married. Jingwan noticed that her husband's gaze lingered on Princess Minxiang and her husband for a moment. Jingwan also looked over and took a few more glances. There didn't seem to be anything special. Li Hongyuan saw the confusion in Jingwan's eyes. He only smiled and didn't say anything. Speaking of which, the affairs of the world were really unpredictable. In the previous life, Princess Minxiang's Fuma was Chen Jingmin. She ruined Chen Jingmin's future while Princess Minxiang was in Chen Jingmin's hands. She was as obedient as she could be. Even if Qin Jingmin didn't treat her well, she didn't even dare to tell her mother. Now, the fifth Fuma was like this. However, no matter how cowardly a man was, there were some things that he wouldn't tolerate. Once he tolerated and gave way, then there must be a reason for his tolerance. Unfortunately, Princess Min Xiang didn't know this. On one hand, she felt that she had been wronged by marrying such a man. On the other hand, she enjoyed the sense of accomplishment of completely controlling this man. Princess Min Xiang feared Li Hongyuan from the bottom of her bones. Therefore, when she met Li Hongyuan's gaze, she couldn't help but shrink back. The fifth Fuma saw this. He never knew that this arrogant and despotic Princess Min Xiang, who could act obediently in front of the emperor, actually had someone who was afraid of her. It was really a rare thing. Speaking of which, the living king of Hell's reputation was very great in the capital. However, his relationship with noble consort Su and her son had always been good. Although he didn't seem to get along well with Prince Rui, he didn't hear of any discord between him and Princess Min Xiang. Thinking about himself, the fifth Fuma felt that there might be something that no one knew about. However, this wasn't something that he dared to investigate. He also didn't have the ability. Her daughter was inexplicably afraid of her adopted son. Noble consort Su was also very helpless. It wasn't that she couldn't think of a way to get them closer. Getting closer didn't have any effect. Noble consort Su sat down on the main seat with a joyful smile. It's rare for all of you to gather together. Now that we're in Jade Essence Palace, there's no need to restrain yourselves. The people below all agreed one after another. There were some things that they didn't want to talk about, and some things that weren't good to talk about. Everyone talked about things that wouldn't make others unhappy or taboo. As a result, the scene was quite harmonious and casual. Jingwan liked naive and cute children. Even if they were naughty, they were quite likable when they weren't naughty. As for Prince Rui's two children, they had been taught very well by Princess Rui. It was just that they were a bit quieter and lacked the liveliness that children should have. Jingwan knew that noble consort Su didn't like her and didn't want to annoy her. She would also feel annoyed by those hypocritical pleasantries. Thus, she bluntly called the two children to her side and let someone deal with noble consort Su. In any case, noble consort Su probably just wanted to talk to her son. Jingwan then asked the palace servants of the Jade Essence Palace to bring over some small objects. There were large and small objects, and even some beads. The two children were already past the age where they would casually stuff anything into their mouths, so Jingwan didn't have to worry about anything. She just played with the two children. At the beginning, the two children were still a little reserved and occasionally glanced at their mother. Seeing that Jingwan had so many tricks in her hands, they gradually forgot. From time to time, they could hear children's words like, "Wow, sixth aunt, you're so awesome," and so on. Their faces were unusually bright. Jingwan gently scratched their little noses and quickly used the beads to string out a lifelike small animal. Otherwise, she would use all kinds of rags to piece together, cut, and sew. A cute doll appeared. Although Jingwan's embroidery skills were terrible, basic sewing was not a problem for her. Otherwise, she would draw very simple pictures with some cartoon shapes. The kittens and puppies on the paper were in all kinds of poses and charmingly naive. The simple background layout looked very interesting and the children couldn't be more fond of it. It was one thing for her to do it herself, but she also taught the two children to do it together. However, it was not a rigid rule. It was their own play. Even if they did something wrong, she could turn waste into treasure. In a second, Princess Rui looked at her two daughters who were smiling very happily. Her eyes became gloomy more than once. She really rarely saw her daughters smiling like this. The things that Jingwan made were very simple and most of the maids could do it. When they were in the prince's mansion, the maids also played with them. However, compared with Jingwan, the maids were more serious and less childlike. There were only a few tricks and there were not many changes. Moreover, when the maids played with them, they never dared to let them hold the scissors by themselves. They could only watch. Naturally, the fun was one level lower. Jingwan was patient and careful. Not only did Princess Rui notice it, but the others also gradually stopped talking and focused their attention on them. Sixth sister-in-law, you seem to still be childlike. When you have children in the future, we can play together. Princess Min Xiang pursed her lips and smiled. However, there was not a single person present who did not understand the euphemism. She was married, had a child, and even played with the child. What was that called? To put it nicely, she was still childish. To put it bluntly, she had not grown up. In this way, how could she serve her husband well? How could she be filial to her parents-in-law? Under normal circumstances, no elder would like her to have an innocent daughter-in-law. However, Princess Min Xiang wasn't a mother and didn't know that some things couldn't be seen only once. She also didn't know that no matter if it was Princess Rui or noble consort Su, when they saw the two children's smiles, their hearts were indescribable. Didn't she see how much noble consort Su disliked Jingwan and didn't say a word at this moment? She also did not know that her words made the king of hell, who she was most afraid of, remember her words. Li Hongyuan was originally a narrow-minded person, especially when it came to Jingwan. Even if she said the word no to Jingwan, he might take revenge on her at any time. Speaking of which, Princess Min Xiang did not have a good impression of Jingwan. It was mainly because noble consort Su said a few words in front of her a few days ago. In fact, according to noble consort Su's character, she was not the kind of person who gossiped behind others' backs. Even if she made her opponent look bad in front of Luqingdi, she was quite skillful. Therefore, she did not say anything. However, Princess Min Xiang misunderstood her. Li Hongyuan glanced at her coldly. Min Xiang is married and has grown up. It is not difficult for her to take care of her husband and children, serve her parents-in-law, and take care of her aunts and uncles. As you said, your sixth sister-in-law has not grown up yet, so there is no need to be too calculative about many things. Princess Min Xiang subconsciously shrank, and Li Hongyuan's following words made her feel even more uncomfortable. No one knew better than herself what she was like after she got married. It could be said that Li Hongyuan's every word poked at her weak spot, making her feel guilty and short of breath. She did not even dare to refute. Noble consort Su also knew that her adopted son was very protective of his daughter-in-law and probably treated her very well. Although she did not know what her daughter was like after she got married, she could hear his sarcasm towards her daughter. She even felt that his following words were actually for her. However, now, noble consort Su was also short of breath in front of Li Hongyuan. Your sixth sister-in-law likes children. When you have children in the future, it will be the same. Children were not in existence that could be mentioned to Princess Min Xiang. After doing such a thing, she could not be righteous, so she did not dare to say anything. Thus, Princess Min Xiang's abnormality was naturally noticed, and it was not only noble consort Su. Min Xiang, what's wrong? Are you hiding something from mother? Princess Min Xiang had a powerful backer in the palace and basically did not know how to restrain herself or look at other people's faces. Compared to those princesses who did not have a mother and did not have any favor, she was simply a naive and sweet girl. Of course, it was the kind that was absolutely derogatory. Thus, she could not hide anything at all. When noble consort Su asked this, she appeared to be at a loss. Then, she subconsciously looked at the prince consort beside her. Her face was a little pale, but there was a warning in her eyes and a pleading that she did not realize. Because of the angle, other than the fifth prince consort, only Jingwan saw it when she looked up unintentionally. Now, she was 100% sure that there was a problem between this couple, and it was not a small problem. The eldest princess had a strong husband and a weak wife. This couple was probably the exact opposite. It was just unknown to what extent. The fifth prince consort did not disappoint Princess Min Xiang. He smiled gently at Princess Min Xiang and looked at noble consort Su. Noble consort, it's like this. Actually, 2 months ago, the princess was pregnant, but she did not realize it at that time. The princess accidentally slipped and the child was gone. The princess was very sad about this and blamed herself, so she did not dare to tell noble consort. Speaking of which, this is also my fault. I did not take good care of the princess. Thus, I was very timid and did not dare to ask for forgiveness from noble consort. As he spoke, he revealed a sad and guilty expression. When Princess Min Xiang heard this, she nodded vigorously and also became sad. It really looked like that. However, her acting skills were not up to standard. In some people's eyes, it was simply clumsy. With noble consort Su's thoughts, she naturally understood that there was probably another problem. Taking into account the current situation, she did not continue to ask. She even comforted her with a few words. She was still young and had to take care of her body. She would definitely have a child. She had to be more careful in the future. It was said that the Empress had already woken up. Although she was still dizzy and did not know what had happened, the illness this time came too suddenly and too quickly. She probably would not recover so quickly. Moreover, it would be difficult for her to even get out of bed in a short period of time. Fortunately, there was no danger to her life. She just needed to recuperate well and it would not affect her lifespan. However, it was best not to overwork her mind, especially during the period of recuperation. It was best not to worry about anything. Knowing this situation, everyone heaved a sigh of relief. For noble consort Su and the others, this situation could be said to be quite advantageous. As long as the Empress was alive, they did not have to worry about Luqingdi creating another balance. Moreover, she was lying in bed and could not do anything. Noble consort Su and the others would have fewer restrictions. However, the reason for her illness was probably still because of Prince Kong. Everyone knew the unfinished words. Luqingdi was so angry that he kicked him twice and then punished him to kneel. This time, Prince Kong was very obedient. He lowered his head and did not say a word. After making sure that the Empress would get better, Luqingdi left the Empress's palace and went back to do his business. From this point of view, it seemed that he was not too bad. But who knew if Luqingdi was also putting on an act? The Empress's current situation was really not suitable to be disturbed, so Luqingdi sent all the people in the palace back. Noble consort Su wanted them to stay in the palace for dinner. In fact, the most important thing was to ask Li Hongyuan's opinion. She did not need to ask about the others at all. She just needed to say a word. Li Hongyuan nodded and agreed. Noble consort Su immediately beamed with joy. Seeing her reaction, Jingwan could not help but silently complain in her heart. Noble consort Su, have you ever thought about the feelings of your own children? Sure enough, you are the same as His Majesty. You are used to being abused by this son. Then, after His Majesty, you have a tendency to be abused. Whether you admit it or not, this was the ability of the King of Hell. No one else could learn it. It was just a meal. Even if Li Hongyuan was not there, Jingwan could eat. With him there, she did not have to worry about anything. She did not have to be careful about what she said to guard against traps. In his mansion, Li Hongyuan took care of Jingwan in some ways. It had become a habit, so he restrained himself. Sometimes, his words and deeds were still very obvious, especially when compared with the other two couples. Therefore, what Jingwan did not know was that she had unintentionally fed some people a lot of dog food. Without comparison, there would be no harm. If the comparison was too obvious, the harm would be too great. In the past, outsiders rarely saw the way they got along with each other. Needless to say, Princess Rui and Prince Rui had always treated each other with respect. She tried her best to be Prince Rui's wife. Prince Rui took care of her and treated her warmly. That was simply a joke. Although Princess Min Xiang had control over her prince consort and did not have any concubines by her side, she only had hatred in her heart. Princess Min Xiang never knew that her brother had such a side to him. How could she not be envious and jealous of Jingwan? Noble consort Su was also very frustrated, especially when she saw Jingwan's indifferent expression. It was obvious that she was used to it. Noble consort Su was even more unhappy. But she had to take care of her son, take care of her son, take care of her son. In the end, he understood Li Hongyuan's character. He wasn't like Patriarch Pei, who thought that Li Hongyuan was putting on an act. This man who always did things his own way and disdained to put on an act, why would he purposely put on an act for others to see? Therefore, this was something that couldn't be any more real. Who would have thought that Jin Qinhuang, who was dissolute and fond of beauty, who would pamper the most beautiful woman for 7 days, would be so considerate towards his Wang Fei, who was not considered to be absolutely beautiful. After finishing lunch and digesting the food, noble consort Su let Li Hongyuan take Jingwan to the side hall where he used to live. That was the place where Li Hongyuan lived before he was 7 years old. Noble consort Su had kept it until now. Of course, Prince Rui also kept it, but Prince Rui declined. He still had things to do and let Princess Rui take the 2 children to rest. As for Princess Min Xiang, there was no need to talk about it. Because this girl, before she got married, she had always been in Jade Essence Palace. At this time, she did not think of herself as a married daughter. Jingwan entered the side hall and saw the layout inside. There was not a single thing that was not meticulous. Moreover, there were no sharp things and the corners were also carefully handled. Noble consort Nyang is really good to Wang Yi. Jingwan sighed with emotion, but this emotion was not pure. A complicated look flashed through Li Hongyuan's eyes. This place was the place where he lived before he was 7 years old, and the time he came back was when he was 10 years old. This meant that the real time that he parted with this place added together was close to 50 years. Originally, he should not have any impression of this place, but after walking in, some things still faintly appeared in his memory. It could be seen that this memory was very profound to him, but Su Shi destroyed it. In the previous life, it wasn't that Li Hongyuan didn't have resentment, but as time passed, it faded. But now, he had the only person he cared about by his side. Li Hongyuan reached out and pulled Jingwan's hand. Jingwan was puzzled at first, but then she smiled. Is Wang Yi hiding any little secrets here? Even if there is, after so many years, I would have long forgotten. Can I look for it? Jingwan asked expectantly. With regards to her husband's childhood matters, Jingwan was looking forward to it. Li Hongyuan chuckled, sure. Then, Jingwan happily went on a treasure hunt. This side chamber was large enough that Jingwan spent almost the entire lunch break searching for treasures. Needless to say, she really did find some things. Among them, there was a small box that was locked. It looked like it hadn't been opened for many years. Therefore, even if this box was known to exist, noble consort Su and the palace maids who cleaned this bedchamber probably didn't know what was inside. Li Hongyuan carefully thought about it. According to his vague memory, he searched several places and finally found the key. I didn't know that Yuan was so good at hiding things. Jingwan opened the box and the things inside were completely revealed. They were all small things, and most of them were toys. However, it was obvious that in the eyes of a child, these things were treasures. Li Hongyuan basically didn't remember the origins of these things, but among them, there was a red fortune bag that he took out. What's wrong? Do you have an impression of this thing? Li Hongyuan shook his head. He had already felt that there was something inside. When he opened it, it was a piece of jade. However, the moment he saw it, Li Hongyuan's expression became abnormal. It was a very special piece of jade. It was crystal clear and slightly yellow in color, but there were scattered blood-red patterns that looked like cracks. It didn't look like they were blended, but rather, the cracks were completely embedded in it. However, the surface was incomparably smooth. According to the current technology, such a thing couldn't be artificially created. Jingwan felt that it was strange, but it wasn't unbelievable. After all, there were all kinds of strange things in the world. It looks quite beautiful, Ah Yuan. What's wrong? Is there something wrong? Li Hongyuan restrained the emotions on his face. It's nothing. I just remembered that this was left behind by the imperial consort. It's the only thing she left behind that is in my hands. If that was the case, Li Hongyuan naturally wouldn't do anything. However, before he died in his previous life, this piece of jade was with him. It shouldn't have been strange. However, after he moved out from here at the age of 7, other than occasionally coming in the first year, he never came in again. In his previous life, after he ascended the throne, he sent the palace servants to clean up this place. He didn't touch it at all. As for whether this box was in his hands or not, he forgot. However, he was 100% sure that this jade wasn't with him. A few years before he died, this jade inexplicably appeared by his side. He even carried it with him from time to time. However, now that he thought about it, he couldn't remember how this jade appeared. He cared about it so much that it never left his body. There was no reason for him to forget its origin. The more he thought about it, the more suspicious it became. It was as if it appeared out of thin air, and he didn't suspect it at all. At that time, he seemed to have completely forgotten that this was something left behind by his biological mother. Now, the moment he saw it, he clearly knew its origin. There was something wrong with this jade. Li Hongyuan held the jade in his hand and decided to carry it with him in the future. As for what to do with it, he didn't think about it at all. After all, if it could appear by his side out of nowhere once, there might be a second time. In that case, it was better to just keep it. Of course, he wouldn't let Jingwan touch something he didn't understand. Jingwan naturally wouldn't touch the only thing left behind by the imperial noble consort. Since it's a treasure, why didn't you take it with you when you moved out? Jingwan said as she locked up the box again. At this point, she definitely wouldn't take it with her. It would be best if it was returned to somewhere far away. As for what would happen in the end, there was no need to fuss over it. I forgot. Maybe I hid it when I was younger. I didn't think of it when I moved out. Jingwan nodded. Maybe. Children are naturally forgetful. Fortunately, the imperial noble consort always kept it. Otherwise, I don't know where it would be. Li Hongyuan answered absent-mindedly. From time to time, he would look at the jade in his hand. Tonight, he naturally wasn't angry. Seeing the only thing left behind by his mother, it was normal for him to be a little strange. After Li Hongyuan examined it a few times, he still found some differences. He remembered that in his previous life, the red lines inside were alive. That kind of feeling was really flowing. Now, the water inside still wasn't rigid, but it was a characteristic that a normal good jade should have. The abnormality seemed to be from his previous life. When it was about time, the two left the side hall hand in hand. Li Hongyuan didn't want to stay in the Jade Essence Palace, so he said goodbye. Imperial noble consort Su's complexion was a little bad. He didn't know if it was because of this, but she didn't urge him to stay. Afterwards, Jingwan found out that Princess Min Xiang had already left the palace an hour ago. It seemed that there was an 80 to 90% chance that the mother and daughter had a conflict. After leaving the Jade Essence Palace, Jingwan suddenly remembered that perhaps she should go see Qin Shu Fei. When she was in the Empress Palace, she didn't seem to notice the other's existence. Thus, she mentioned it to Li Hongyuan. Li Hongyuan nodded. Thus, they went to the Sweet Dew Palace. Qin Shu Fei still maintained an attitude of not being close or distant. Her smile was gentle. I didn't think that the two of you would come to Ben Gong's place. To be honest, with Qin Shu Fei's attitude, if a certain person hadn't told her, she wouldn't have suspected that this Qin Shu Fei was in cahoots with a certain person. Moreover, how did she make the Empress of the Imperial Palace fall just like that? She couldn't be too amazing. The last time I entered the palace, I should have paid my respects to Imperial Noble Consort Shu. However, because of a small accident, I left the palace first. Thinking that there's nothing to do now, I came to see Imperial Noble. I hope Imperial Noble doesn't blame me. Qin Shu Fei laughed. You're quite honest. Then, they chatted a bit more. Li Hongyuan just drank tea on the side, looking relaxed and at ease. However, other than the first greeting, he didn't say a word. No matter how one looked at it, it was a bit, alright, Ben Gong won't keep you. If you wait any longer, Old Sixth will have a temper. Qin Shu Fei said slightly teasingly. Jingwan was about to say something, when Luqing Emperor's chamberlain outside came to deliver the imperial edict. Left with no choice, Li Hongyuan and Jingwan received the imperial edict together. The so-called imperial edict was only a verbal order, but the thing that came with it, Qin Shu Fei received the phoenix seal with both hands and sighed helplessly. The tree wants to be still, but the wind won't stop. That's right, Gui, De, Shu, and Xian were the 4 imperial concubines, with Gui Fei as the head. Luqing Emperor only had 2 imperial concubines in his harem. The Empress had a phoenix body, so even if the palace affairs weren't handed over to the people around the Empress, the phoenix seal should have been handed over to Gui Fei. She would take care of official business, and then Shu Fei would assist her. But now, the Gui Fei was bypassed, and the phoenix seal fell into Shu Fei's hands. In the end, it was probably for the sake of balance. She could almost imagine that in the future, Kong Wang Qin's power would shrink, and the Gong Wang Qin's power would expand. The Sweet Dew Palace, which had always been peaceful, would also become lively. And some things, even if Qin Shu Fei didn't want to get involved, they would take the initiative to involve her. There would always be people who wouldn't let her off easily, especially the Gong Wang Qin, who knows how much he would jump up and down. If Qin Shu Fei really was a person who liked the present life, then the following days would really make her uncomfortable. Shu Fei Nyang. Jingwan felt a little guilty, because she was the culprit. If it weren't for her, her husband wouldn't have let the Empress fall ill, and if the Empress didn't fall ill, Shu Fei wouldn't have to take on such a hot potato and could still live a comfortable life. Qin Shu Fei saw Jingwan's worry and her heart warmed. She really was a good child. Chuckling, it's okay, although I don't like it, I can still cope. I'm afraid someone will come here soon, you should leave the palace. They couldn't help if they stayed, on the contrary, they might even cause trouble, so it was best to obediently leave the palace. Leaving the palace and boarding the Wang mansion's carriage, Jingwan sighed, the following days won't be peaceful. When did Wan ever feel peaceful? That's right, this inheritance war, as long as it doesn't end, there will be no peace. Even if it ends, it may be chaotic for a while. It won't affect Wan. What he did was to hold up the sky for Jingwan, but if he made her worry and tired, what was the point of living? I know. Jingwan lazily lay on Li Hongyuan's lap. By the way, a Yuan, Princess Min Xiang and her husband don't seem to be on good terms. It's nothing more than Min Xiang being unruly and domineering. I don't know the specifics, but if you're interested, you can ask an E. In Jingwan's view, an E was the head of the secret service under the living Hell King. He not only had to do the work on the surface, but also had to do things in the dark. He even had to manage all kinds of gossip, which was really difficult for him. A Yuan should give him more monthly allowance. Jingwan teased. Isn't this under Wan's management? Besides, it's just a summary of some information, how hard can it be? Jingwan was silent for a moment. It seemed that they didn't need to care about food and clothing, all of it went through the Wang mansion's public account, and every month there was at least 1,000 taels. If they went out on missions, there were additional subsidies. For ordinary high-ranking officials, as guards, it seemed that having 10 taels a month was not bad. Even if it was a Wang mansion, especially one with power and influence, 100 taels a month was already very good. Thinking about it this way, Jin Qinwang mansion was simply the highest of high salaries, and it seemed that they weren't treated badly. Jingwan's heart was at ease. Chapter 383. The guards of honor stopped. Zhuzi, the young master of General He's family, is blocking the road. When Jingwan heard that, she snorted and looked at Li Hongyuan with ridicule. The young master of the He family truly loves a Yuan deeply. After all, other than him, there shouldn't be anyone else who would dare to block the carriage of the King of Hell, right? Is a Yuan not prepared to express anything? Li Hongyuan lazily glanced at Jingwan. Sorry, Ben Wang only wants to fight with his own Wang Fei. I don't have any interest in fighting with outsiders. Jingwan made an embarrassed face. What was it? Such a manly matter, how could he turn it into such a perverted thing? After the embarrassment was over, Jingwan coldly laughed. Wang Yi can slowly fight by yourself. Ben Wang Fei has no interest in accompanying you. It doesn't matter if you fight on the bed or off the bed, our Jin Qinwang will definitely win. She reached out and lightly patted his face. Ben Wang Fei is quite optimistic about you. Work hard, Wang Yi. Perverted was perverted, violent was violent, who was afraid of who? I will definitely win under the bed. As to whether I can win on the bed, only Wang Fei will know. Li Hongyuan leaned close to Jingwan's ear and lowered his voice. He stuck out his tongue and licked Jingwan's earlobe. Wan, tell me, does this husband seem to have lost or won? He deliberately pulled out a seductive ending note. Jingwan couldn't help but tremble. She subconsciously slapped him. Speak properly. So easily breaking the rules. Li Hongyuan directly laughed out loud. Don't talk about slapping him away. His entire person hung onto Jingwan's body. Although Jingwan's physical fitness was much stronger than the majority of women, in Li Hongyuan's hands, she was still like a little chick. The people outside didn't receive any instructions from their masters for a long time and also didn't express anything. They just looked down and didn't say anything. Now, as long as the two masters were together in the carriage, they would habitually weaken their 5 senses, especially their hearing. They could always find a way to divert their attention. Because the situation in the carriage was usually poisonous. It was a group of young and vigorous men. Although the situation was special and their desires were lower than ordinary people, it didn't mean that they didn't have it. From time to time, they would be stimulated. Even a saint would get angry, so it was best to think of a way to isolate this situation. He Zhihai came alone today and didn't ride a horse. Although he blocked the road, he didn't barge in. He was actually a little nervous. He was afraid that Jin Qinwang would refuse. After all, if Qinwang refused, he wouldn't dare to force. It wasn't because he was afraid of being beaten again, but because it would bring trouble to his family. Return to the Fu. Li Hongyuan opened his mouth. Because he had long prepared to properly train He Zhihai. He wanted to turn him into a valiant general who could lead the army. This fight was definitely going to happen. Most likely, it would be more than once. He had to thoroughly beat this brat until he became obedient. Only then, it would be easier to deal with him in the future. It was just that now wasn't the time. He had to let He Zhihai block the door again and again. When he was finally annoyed to the point that he couldn't stand, then he would make a move. Only then would he be able to block the conspiracy theories in some people's minds. Only then could his plan proceed smoothly. The guards of honor started to move forward again, ignoring little gangster He who was standing in the middle. Little gangster He couldn't act like a tyrant anymore, so he could only obediently make way for them. Then, he looked at the guards of honor leaving with a pitiful expression on his face. If someone didn't know what was going on, they would think that he was looking at a heartless person. Until the procession of honor disappeared from his sight, little bully He dejectedly left, completely unable to raise his spirit. When he returned home, his family members saw his appearance and were fiercely shocked. Even if this brat's leg was broken, he could still jump up and down. All day long, he didn't have a single moment of rest. His energy was so good that it gave people a headache. To be honest, they really hadn't seen him like this before. Although He Zhihai was a bully, the kind that gave the family an abnormal headache. When it was time to scold, he would scold, and when it was time to beat, he would beat. He absolutely wouldn't be lenient. However, towards this youngest child, he was still abnormally fond of him. At this time, he naturally expressed his concern, fearing that he would really encounter something. He Zhihai scowled miserably. Jin Qinhuang ignored me. Those who didn't know would think that he was abandoned by Jin Qinhuang and had an expression of being struck by lightning. And those who knew would also have an expression of being struck by lightning. This evil creature really foolishly went to block the door. The scene froze for a few breaths. Then, one by one, they flicked their sleeves and left. This kind of thing, it would be strange if Jin Qinhuang paid attention to you. Hey, you guys don't go ah. Listen to me ah, Jin Qinhuang is too excessive. The procession of honor has stopped. I thought that he would have a good fight with me. Last time, we clearly agreed, how could he go back on his words? He Zhihai chased this, chased that, catching people to complain. He was the youngest among the masters of the He family. When they were impatient, they all sent him a single word, scram. Go to the side that was cool and stay there. When they ignored him, little tyrant He went to look for the family members he brought back. These people didn't dare to tell him to scram, so if they hid, they would be met with little tyrant He's merciless punches. After that, they could only listen to little tyrant He's repeated complaints. They had only seen this little tyrant as lively as a dragon and lively as a tiger. All day long, he was full of vigor and might. Now, he had a melancholy expression. To be honest, it could no longer be described as being struck by lightning. General, save me. Our family's little Gongzi has been replaced by someone. Hurry and find the real little Gongzi. Even if that little tyrant was a bit overbearing, it was still much better than this. Now, this one was really too terrifying. After General He returned to the Fu, he heard this terrifying news. He almost pulled all of his beard off. He sent someone to call that evil creature over. Then, he saw that there wasn't the slightest bit of fatality. His listless and listless youngest son weakly called out, "Dad," instead of the energetic old man, "What are you looking for me for?" In that instant, he was greatly shocked. Then, he became angry, blocking the way in front of Jin Qinhuang Ye's procession of honor. You are really becoming more and more lawless. Laozi said so much to you, was it all in vain? Dad, Jin Wang Yi is ignoring me. How can he ignore me? Then, as if he thought of something, his eyes suddenly became bright. Dad, why don't you go directly to the emperor and ask for an imperial edict? If there is an imperial edict, Jin Wang Yi will definitely not refuse, right? The more he thought about it, the more he felt that this idea was really too good. General He Jinwei was so angry that he almost fell backwards. This was completely not listening to his words and even fantasizing about asking for an imperial edict to fight. He knew that this evil creature's mind was only filled with fighting and fighting all day long, but he didn't think that it would be so outrageous to this extent. Those who knew would only silently look at you, this idiot. Those who didn't know would think that you were taking the opportunity to secretly communicate with Jin Wang Yi in an attempt to make a big conspiracy. Jin Wang Yi not paying attention to you is right and also light. If he gave an order, the guards by his side could completely cripple you, or even kill you. The more he thought about it, the angrier he got. So, he took out the horsewhip that basically never left his side and lashed it at Little Tyrant He. Little Tyrant He originally had a face full of hope, but what could he do? What he waited for was Laozi's whip. Thus, he began to jump up and down to dodge. Old man, why are you hitting me again? You're not allowed to hit anymore. If you hit again, Xiao Yi will fight back. Again. Xiao Yi will really fight back. Aw. However, he only heard all kinds of shouts and didn't really dare to fight back. When the people outside heard this, they breathed a sigh of relief. Finally, it was normal. At He Jinwei's age, in the end, he couldn't compare to He Zhihai's physical strength. In the end, he stopped panting. You're not allowed to go find Jin Wang Yi again, do you hear me? If you dare to go again, do you believe that Laozi will immediately send you back to the northeast border city? If I send him away, Xiao Yi will come back by himself. He Zhihai grimaced in pain. After all, the injuries on his body were real. He muttered in a low voice. If it was before he saw Li Hongyuan's martial prowess, He Zhihai would rather stay in the border city. Now, he hadn't even fought once and he wanted to let him go. No way. He Jinwei was so angry that he almost vomited blood. I already said that Jin Wang Yi is not someone who is easy to provoke. He can let you go once, but there might not be a second time. You delivered yourself to his doorstep. Even if you die, no one can ask for justice from you. At most, I just blocked the carriage and didn't do anything else. Would Jin Wang Yi be so unreasonable as to directly take my life? He Zhihai muttered with a bit of grievance. General, he was so angry that he laughed. Reasonable? These 3 words can actually come out of your mouth. Little Tyrant He was speechless. Fine, he admitted that when they were in the border city, the most unreasonable person was him. Dad, in my opinion, Jin Wang Yi is not as notorious as you say. He is such a powerful person. If he doesn't see eye to eye, he will directly beat them up and lose half his life. Who would dare to find trouble with him? He is not a 3-year-old child. He can't always find someone to be unhappy with. Therefore, the living king of hell and whatnot is definitely a false rumor. As a soldier, we should be upright and reasonable, seek truth from facts. Don't be like those civil officials who only know how to scheme and quarrel with words all day long. These words were taught by you, but now you are so prejudiced against Jin Wang Yi. He Jinwei probably didn't think that this evil spawn would actually talk reason with him one day and even use his words to block him. And that won't find someone to be unhappy with, didn't you, this evil spawn, specialize in doing this kind of thing? Don't you feel embarrassed to say such words again and again? Ah. General, he only felt that his head was big, but to be honest, he really couldn't do anything about this evil spawn. This evil spawn thought that Jin Wang Yi was a good person. Then, no matter what, you couldn't change his way of thinking. Perhaps in some people's eyes, appearance was justice. But in He Ji Hai's mind, it was definitely martial arts was justice. In any case, you are not allowed to go find Jin Qinhuangyi again. Otherwise, Laozi will lock you in an iron cage. An iron cage that could lock up a tiger was probably the only thing that could lock up He Ji Hai's mind. The iron bars were too thin and had to be specially made. He Ji Hai's eyes turned, but he didn't continue to argue with his old man. He Jinwei was 100% sure that this evil spawn definitely hadn't given up on the idea. He didn't know what would happen next. Usually, he was a boorish man, but that bit of intelligence was all used to play mind games with them. Who in the He family wasn't upright and strict with themselves? How could there be such an anomaly? If that face didn't look so similar to his own, he would suspect that his loyal wife had put a green hat on his head. Well, in fact, it was He Furen who suspected that He Jinwei had brought back an outside wife to swap her son. Therefore, Furen he also didn't believe that she had given birth to such a son. Of course, this was just a joke. However, when Furen he beat her son, she was more ruthless than General He. If other people were beaten by their father, they could still find their mother for protection. But for He Ji Hai, if he dared to find his mother, it would definitely be a male and female double fight. General He thought that in order to not make things worse, it would be best to report to Luqingdi. Originally, the He family was going to hold a banquet for 2 days, and the invitation had been sent out. However, they didn't expect that the Empress was seriously ill. Although it wasn't like she had passed away, they still had to give her some face. Therefore, the banquet was postponed. Because of this, little gangster he went out to play. Then, the next day, the servant girl who served He Ji Hai found that the door of her young master's room couldn't be opened. Little gangster he might have all kinds of bad habits, but he didn't like to laze in bed. It was already past the time, and it was too strange that he couldn't be seen. Although this servant girl was brought back from the border town and wasn't as delicate as the servant girls of ordinary families, she didn't dare to kick the young master's door. Therefore, she hurriedly ran out to report. He Jinwei and his Furen came hand in hand. Both of them were dressed in martial attire. In a general family, this morning exercise was an essential homework. The general's Furen first knocked on the door, but there wasn't the slightest movement. Then, her long, shapely eyebrows rose, and she lifted her foot to kick the door open. That action was quite nimble and destructive. It could be seen that she often did this kind of thing. When everyone entered the room, the result was that the bed was neat and tidy. There wasn't a single shadow, and it was ice cold. This person hadn't been on the bed for quite some time. The door was closed from the inside, so he could only go out through the window. It wasn't that little gangster, he hadn't done this kind of thing before. After checking, sure enough, there was a window that looked tightly closed, but in reality, it wasn't locked. Then, they found out that little gangster his private stash of money was gone. Thus, how could they not know what was going on? The general's Furen fiercely glared at General He, find that evil creature and then settle the account with you. Then she directly went out of the room. Someone come, send a few people to guard the vicinity of Jin Qinhuang Fu. If you see He Ji Hai, that disgraceful thing, directly tie him up. If he dares to resist, as long as he's still alive, beat him until he's crippled. Behind him, General He rubbed his nose. That evil creature running away from home, most likely it was because he said that he wanted to lock him up in an iron cage. Who knew that this evil creature, in order to achieve his goal, would directly play this trick? Being angered by his Furen, he felt that he was very innocent, okay? Only, beating him until he's crippled, wasn't it a bit too ruthless? The silver on He Ji Hai's body wasn't much, but it wasn't little either. It was enough for him to mingle around outside for a period of time. Regardless of whether he could exchange blows with Jin Wang during this period of time, even if he didn't have the chance, he still had to create an opportunity. If he used up all the money on him and still didn't achieve his goal, then he would talk about it when the time came. After returning, he would be even more miserable. For the time being, he shouldn't think about it. In any case, every time he thought about how ruthless his Laonyang was, he couldn't help but grit his teeth. He knew that if he ran away from home, he would definitely be caught by his papa and mama. This kind of game where you chase and I hide, he had been playing since he was a few years old. Moreover, it was as if he was born with this skill, playing it very smoothly. Not long after, the land around Jin Wang Fu had already been trampled by him. So when he saw his Laoj personally leading people to catch him, the little gangster squatting on the wall snorted disdainfully and continued to gnaw on the steamed bun in his hand. Little gangster, he was very confident that unless he was surrounded by enough people in a relatively wide area, he wouldn't be easily caught. In some aspects, little gangster, he was absolutely blessed by the heavens. He could master martial arts with just a little bit, and he also had a valiant physique and inexhaustible energy. His physical strength was also absolutely valiant. It wasn't enough to describe him as an animal. Other people would have times when they were tired on the battlefield, but on the battlefield, it was as if he was playing. In short, when he participated in the war at the northeast border, not once did he show any signs of fatigue. When other people were gasping for breath and their hands were shaking, he was as excited as if he had just finished warming up. Therefore, even if he messed around, those high-ranking officers really didn't hate him. Where was the limit of little gangster he's physical strength? His family didn't know, the Northeast Army didn't know, and even he himself didn't know. After all, under normal circumstances, the limit couldn't be called the limit. That kind of oppression, or even struggling on the line between life and death, was the real limit. If there was anyone in the world who knew, it would probably be Li Hongyuan. In his previous life, it was this winter when the He family was exterminated. He fought alone for 7 whole days. Except for the time when he was looking for food, he was either chasing the enemy or killing them. He didn't sleep at all. In the end, when he was finally found, he couldn't be called a human anymore. However, the after effects were also very serious. As for how long this peak state could last, Li Hongyuan later saw it with his own eyes. 3 to 4 days was nothing difficult. He really couldn't be called a human anymore. Although Li Hongyuan could still beat him now, he was very self-aware. First, it was the result of his deliberate training over the years. His previous life was far from what it was now. Second, there was no spiritual pressure in He Hongyuan's sea of consciousness, so it was difficult for him to explode. He was only 16 years old now. After a few more years, when he fully matured, the power that he could only explode now could be used. At that time, he would only need to use his arms and fingers. Li Hongyuan was definitely not his opponent. This was He Hai's own advantage. He occupied a high position, which other people couldn't achieve no matter how much they trained. Although He Zhihai was very good at hiding from his own family, he was still not good at hiding from Yi's people. After all, the He family's people were soldiers. How could they be compared with the shadow guards in this respect? Therefore, when He Zhihai stepped on the ground, the shadow guards of the prince's mansion found out and reported to Yi immediately. Li Hongyuan naturally knew. As long as he doesn't climb over the walls of Jin Wangfu, there's no need to care about him. It wasn't that the Wangfu's people didn't find He Hai's unexpected indulgence strange, but they didn't ask much. In the past, didn't they indulge Ruan Fangfei? At that time, they had a purpose. Now, they definitely had one. These people in Jin Wangfu always had a mysterious trust in their own master. The matter of Li Hongyuan wanting to cultivate He Hai, Jingwan knew about it. Jingwan often used this matter to tease him. In the end, He Hai was worried that he was too reckless and would implicate his family. Therefore, he only dared to wander around outside the Wangfu. However, in order to fish, Li Hongyuan's frequency of going out was relatively high. Of course, every time he went out, there was a legitimate reason, so no one would suspect anything. This time, it happened once, twice, thrice. Occasionally, when He Hai was ignored by Li Hongyuan, his elder brother would bring people out to catch him. However, he would always slip away. This matter naturally became known by more and more people. It was simply another matter that people took delight in talking about. Jin Wangfu's style in the past was something that everyone knew. However, in the past 1 or 2 years, he had restrained himself a lot. Only now did they discover this point. However, the living king of hell was still the living king of hell. He wouldn't stop being the king of hell just because he hadn't made a move for a period of time. It was also because that he family's young master didn't do anything that he was ignored. If he was annoyed again and again, it was estimated that he would make a move to clean him up. Many people were also guessing how long the He family's young master could last. However, no one dared to be certain. Thinking back, when Jin Wangfei and Jin Wangfu were engaged, there were people who opened a booklet to see how long Jin Wangfei could live. Jin Wangfei didn't have anything happen to her and properly married into the Wangfu. 10 li of red dowry, hundreds of people obstructing the marriage, it was very lively. After that, there were people who opened a booklet to see how long Jin Wangfei could live under Jin Wangfu. The result was similarly unexpected. So now, they really didn't dare to say anything with certainty. However, these didn't matter. It was enough that there was a show to watch. In fact, it wasn't only He Hai who was ignored by Li Hongyuan. There was another person, and that was Li Hongming. In the past, when they met, Li Hongyuan would at least give a greeting. Now, he completely ignored everyone he saw and treated the other brothers as normal. At this time, Li Hongming also knew that the previous matter wasn't over yet. Even if Li Hongyuan and Mu Fei reconciled, it didn't mean that he would be as good as before. If he was completely ignored by Li Hongyuan, it might not be a bad thing. However, he had to ensure that he would never provoke him in the future. Otherwise, at that time, he would most likely kill him. Even if he deliberately avoided him, he might still provoke him. After all, when he cleaned him up in the past, many times it was inexplicable. In the past, because of noble consort Su, Li Hongyuan was actually quite merciful to him. If he exerted a bit of pressure on him, then the other brothers would have to suffer a bit of pressure. In this regard, Li Hongyuan could be said to be a great help to him. If Li Hongyuan exerted a bit of pressure on him in the future, he could imagine how dejected he would be. Thinking of this, Li Hongming's expression became particularly gloomy. Noble consort Su originally didn't know about this matter, but Li Hongming intentionally or unintentionally let her know. As a result, noble consort Su's spirit began to fade after a few days. She called Li Hongming over and directly asked him, "Your younger brother helped you, but you didn't go to him to thank him?" Li Hongming smiled bitterly. "Mu Fei, this son has always wanted to, but I just haven't found the right opportunity. With this delay, sixth brother is giving me less and less of a chance." Noble consort Su directly smashed a cup at him. "Ben Gong is very clear about your thoughts. Don't expect Ben Gong to help you in this matter. Either you solve it yourself, or if he does anything to you in the future, you will have to bear it yourself." Yuan had always been the kind of person who would take revenge on anyone who had a grudge against him. He would never let anything go past the night. This time, he was so angry because of her. He didn't want to argue with his mother, so naturally, he transferred all his anger to his second son. However, this bastard didn't take it seriously. Now that he finally realized that something was wrong, he came looking for her. Li Hongming could only leave Jade Essence Palace with a sullen face. Noble consort Su rubbed her temples. Everyone says that Lao Lu is a vile creature. This Lao and Min Xiang are also vile creatures. None of them are easy to worry about. His trusted palace maid beside him hurriedly comforted him while gently massaging him. Noble consort Su's method didn't work, so Li Hongming could only go find Li Hongyuan. What did it mean to kiss someone's cold but with warm face? He thoroughly understood what it meant. When Prince Rui came to Jin Qin Wangfu, he was shut out of the gate. This matter became a joke between brothers the next day. Li Hongming was used to putting on an act. At this time, his face couldn't keep it straight. It wasn't easy to meet Jin Qin Wang, so he diligently appeared at the morning court. After the morning court ended, Li Hongming prepared to throw away his face in front of so many people. He didn't expect to achieve his goal, but to let the court officials see his sincerity. In the future, when Li Hongyuan made a move against him, he could say a few good words for him in front of Fu Wang. However, man proposes, God disposes. He was about to step forward when He Jinwei beat him to it. Greetings to Wang Ye. First of all, his attitude was quite sincere. Is something the matter? Li Hongyuan faintly glanced at him. Wang Ye, regarding the matter of my son obstructing Wang Ye many times recently, this official apologizes to Wang Ye and asks for Wang Ye's forgiveness. Ben Wang won't go as far as to bicker with a young boy. However, if it happens too many times, it will be annoying. General, he still needs to control it. If there's a next time, Ben Wang may not let him leave in one piece. Li Hongyuan's tone was still indifferent. He Jinwei smiled bitterly. Wang Ye, you don't know. My son is obsessed with martial arts. Towards people with strong martial arts skills, he must find someone to spar with. Because of this, I often reprimanded him, but it was completely useless. These days, he was afraid that this official would lock him up, so he simply took the money and went out without returning home. If it was a normal situation, I can take my son home, but my son is used to hiding in the border town and is slippery. It really gives me a headache. What does it have to do with Ben Wang? Li Hongyuan's face already showed some impatience. He Jinwei resisted the action of wiping his sweat. Facing Jin Qin Wang, this pressure was really quite big. However, if he didn't satisfy that evil creature's wish, this matter would never end. This official has a presumptuous request. Can this official ask for Wang Ye to condescend? Let that evil creature know that there is always someone better. Perhaps it will stop. Li Hongyuan sneered. Last time, your son offended Ben Wang's Wang Fei. Ben Wang let him learn a lesson and didn't bicker with him. Now that you want Ben Wang to make a move, aren't you afraid that Ben Wang will cripple him? He Jinwei didn't think that Li Hongyuan was joking at all. He forced a smile. If it's really like this, then it's his fate. Lao Lu, since it's like this, you might as well help minister he this once. It's also a good opportunity to let Jin see how far your martial arts have progressed. When you left the palace at the age of 16, Jin hasn't seen your martial arts skills. Among you brothers, your martial arts skills are the best and your innate talent is the best. Lu Qingdi, who had originally left from Dan Emperor's side, appeared outside the main hall at some unknown time. He was quite emotional. Many thanks for Emperor's help. He Jinwei was extremely grateful. Sure enough, this report from before was correct. Li Hongyuan frowned, appearing a little unwilling. Fu Wang, your honor is not willing to fulfill such a small wish. Lu Qingdi pretended to be sad. Ken accepts the order. Li Hongyuan responded, but his face was still cold. Fu Wang is still full of energy when shouting at people. People like it more, like this. He showed obvious disdain. Lu Qingdi's face darkened. Disgraceful thing, how can you speak to Laozi like that? Li Hongyuan's expression eased. almost writing, "Sure enough, it should be like this, pleasing to the eye." Luqingdi's nose almost crooked from anger. On the side, He Jinwei secretly glanced at Luqingdi. His mind was balanced. That evil spawn of his would also talk back, but he wouldn't dare to contradict him and wouldn't specifically anger him. But Jin Qinhuang was different. Looking at the situation and the surrounding courtiers, they were completely unconcerned. Then looking at the emperor, after a few breaths of time, he adjusted his mood. It looked like he was used to it. Perhaps this situation was still light. That evil spawn of his was really far from it. If Luqingdi wanted to watch, this could only be done in the palace. There was no need for instructions, someone had already taken the initiative to pass down the message. As for where to find little bully he who didn't return home, just look at the places he appeared in these few days. In any case, he was near Jin Qinhuang Fu. Otherwise, if they took Jin Qinhuang's honor guard out for a walk, he would definitely appear. Yuan you are several years older than Minister He's youngest son. Later, when you spar, control yourself a little and don't go too far. No. He Jinwei hurriedly said, Your Majesty, you don't know. Once my son fights with others, he gets excited easily. Especially when he meets his match, he doesn't know how to restrain himself. Moreover, that kid always doesn't know what's good for him. Later, when Wang Ye really shows mercy on him, he will only think that Wang Ye is looking down on him. Instead, it will arouse his ferocious nature and he will become more and more reckless. If by any chance he injures Wang Ye, that evil spawn should be ruthlessly dealt with. Hearing this, Luqingdi frowned. Minister, how is your son's martial arts? Originally, he thought that a 16-year-old kid, no matter how powerful he was, would be like that. Now, it seemed that it wasn't the case. He Jinwei's lips quivered, attracting the attention of the courtiers who had stayed behind to watch the battle. After a while, he awkwardly said, replying to Your Majesty, that evil creature is the #1 in the Northeast Army. This is not a boast made by the soldiers to give him face, but he used his own strength to fight for it. This subject and my eldest son have both been defeated by him. Many people gasped with Luqingdi. They all knew how valiant He Jinwei was, and He Jinwei's eldest son was even better. This 16-year-old kid was able to defeat them. Was the He family trying to defy the heavens? After exclaiming in amazement, Luqingdi turned to look at He Jinwei. My dear minister, you hit it well. He Jinwei was embarrassed. Your Majesty, the main thing is that this kid's temperament is too unstable. It's difficult for him to take on such a big responsibility. This minister originally wanted to train him for 2 more years. Luqingdi was not an unreasonable person. Although he didn't know much about war, he knew that martial arts alone couldn't lead soldiers. He nodded to express his understanding. My dear minister's worries are reasonable. However, it's a blessing for our Qi Yuan dynasty that the He family can produce another valiant general. Your Majesty is too kind. It's my duty to protect the country. Naturally, the emperor liked this kind of official very much. However, when he looked at Li Hongyuan again, he was worried. He was very proud of his son, but his opponent was the best in the Northeast Army, a little lunatic who didn't care about anything when he fought. His son was raised by a noble and was a few years older than that kid, so he didn't have an advantage. Was it too late to stop this fight now? He was the emperor with a golden mouth and jade words, but there were so many people who really believed him. Li Hongyuan didn't seem to notice Luqingdi's worry. Even if he did, he would ignore it. After fishing for so long, it was just the beginning of the harvest. How could he stop now? Imperial father, this son will go to Imperial mother's place to change clothes. I will take my leave now. After saying that, he left by himself. Luqingdi opened his mouth and swallowed back the words that were about to come out. He Jinwei looked down and didn't see the emperor and father, who didn't have any dignity at all. Lu Qingdi didn't care. In any case, it wasn't the first time that he was seen by his officials. Everyone was used to it. After waiting for a moment, Your Majesty, although my son is muddle-headed, he has always only challenged people who are stronger than him. Although he has always judged based on his own feelings, he has almost never made a mistake. Therefore, in this official's opinion, Jin Wangye's skill is above my son's, so... According to the degree of ruthlessness of the King of Hell, you don't have to worry at all. Lu Qingdi was really relieved, but he was puzzled. Was this son strong to this extent? He leisurely went to the martial arts practice field in the palace. That was the place where the princes practiced martial arts. They already knew who was going to use it. Moreover, the emperor and the court officials had arrived, so they didn't dare to neglect. They prepared the field and carefully checked it again and again to make sure that there were no mistakes. As the saying goes, swords have no eyes. Therefore, for this kind of thing, they didn't ask for merit, but to not make a mistake. It should be known that the masters who taught the princes martial arts were always trembling with fear. If they met those mischievous and completely disobedient princes, they would simply put their heads on their waistbands. Not long after Lu Qingdi and the others sat down, Li Hongyuan also arrived. He changed out of his gorgeous Qinhuang robe and put on a black robe. The sleeves were tightened and the waist was tightened. His whole person seemed more upright and straight. His handsome face was matchless. If one ignored his temperament, anyone who saw him would praise him. What a pity, it was really a pity, including Lu Qingdi. At first, he was proud, but then his expression darkened. Even if this child lost his mother, if he wasn't a devil, and Li Hongyuan's other brothers seemed to suddenly realize at this moment that if the Imperial Gui Fei was still here, they probably wouldn't have to fight for anything. They would obediently go to the corner and plant mushrooms. Maybe they could even become rich Wangye. Rejoice, really rejoice. Even so, those who didn't know the truth were still very afraid of him. However, those who knew Li Hongyuan's ability were all twitching their mouths and silently criticizing him. Pity. Rejoice. I hope you won't cry too miserably in the end. This was the one who hid the deepest and the one with the most profound cultivation. The others were just drizzling rain. He Zhihai hadn't arrived yet, but he didn't mind waiting for a while. Anyway, after this period of time, the matter in Jiangnan had basically come to a final conclusion. For the time being, there was nothing important at hand. Lu Qingdi had the mentality of stealing half a day's rest. He Jinwei was a little sweaty. No matter what, it was a sin to let the emperor wait for a nobody. Fortunately, the waiting time was much shorter than expected. He Zhihai excitedly entered the martial arts practice field and stared at Li Hongyuan with shining eyes. His expression was quite excited. It seemed that there was only one person left in the world. The emperor and the ministers with great power all went to hell. He Jinwei had a feeling that he couldn't bear to look directly. Did this evil creature have to be so shameful? That was a man. Even if he was incomparably handsome, he was still a man. Your eyes were simply like a beautiful woman in thin clothes in front of you. You want to take off her clothes at any time. Quickly, stop. Her father is still on the side and can decide your life and death at any time. Beloved official your son, He Jinwei was very embarrassed. Your Majesty, my son is too excited. Really, he was like this before he fought with people who were stronger than him. In fact, it was not so exaggerated before, really. But, did he dare to say this? He didn't dare to at all. Hearing his general say that his son was strong, Lu Qingdi was happy in his heart and didn't care about other things. He Zhihai, what are you doing in a daze? Hurry up and greet the emperor. He Jinwei roared. He Zhihai finally came to his senses. People like He Zhihai didn't know what embarrassment was. He just greeted the emperor by the book. At a glance, it was obvious that he hadn't learned the rules for a long time and was stiff and inflexible. After that, his eyes lit up. "Your Majesty, can we start?" Lu Qingdi nodded sadly. Then, in the blink of an eye, he rushed to his son. He really couldn't wait. He turned to look at He Zhenwei. "Beloved official He, you were right. Not to mention his obsession with martial arts, his temperament was really unbearable. Without weapons, they fought with fists and feet. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.